The market was hidden deep inside a hollow asteroid. Its walls were cold metal, dripping with oil and echoes of screams. Here, broken things were sold scrap parts. Stolen tech and living beings no one wanted. A rusty cage stood alone under. A red light inside it sat a girl, not quite human, not fully machine either. Her skin was pale gray. Her arms covered in faint scars and wires. One leg was metal, the other was gone. Just a stub and sparks. Her eyes were dull, looking at nothing. Like her soul had left long ago. Next item, the alien auctioneer said loudly. Dragging her cage forward, defective model, one eye blind, damaged speech circuits. Emotional chip fried, he slapped the bars. Making a loud clang, sold as a toy once, but even the children rejected her. A few aliens in the crowd laughed cruelly. No memory, no resistance, just a quiet broken thing, the auctioneer added. Starting at 5 credits, silence. No one raised a hand, even in a place like this. No one wanted her, 2 credits. He tried again, 1 credit. No, come on, not even for parts. The girl didn't move, didn't speak. She was used to being ignored, used to being trash. Then, from the back of the room, someone walked forward. Boots echoed on the metal floor. Calm and steady. It was a human, young, quiet, with grease on. His hands and a worn-out jacket. He looked at the cage, then at the girl, and didn't say anything. The auctioneer smiled. Ah, human scavenger? Good for parts. Yes. The man said calmly, I'll take her. The crowd turned, surprised. Why? Someone sneered, she's trash, she's dead inside. Another said, even the circuits are fried. The human ignored them, pulled out a few chips, and tossed them to the auctioneer. He unlocked the cage, and the girl slowly looked up for the first time. Her eye flickered dim blue light, then she lowered her head again. The human reached out a hand, gently, carefully, no pain. He said softly, I'm not here to hurt you. She didn't believe him, but she took his hand anyway, slowly, weakly, like a child touching fire. He helped her up, and she limped beside him, dragging her bad leg. The crowd watched in silence, some still laughing. What are you going to do with her? A traitor shouted. The man didn't look back. I'll fix her, he said. And she won't belong to anyone again outside the market. The stars shined over black space. The human ship waited, old but strong, resting near the asteroid. Edge, inside the ship, he carried her to a small cot, cleaned the dirt off her face, and gave her water. The girl stared at him, confused. He wasn't yelling, wasn't touching her roughly. He didn't even chain her down. She opened her mouth, slowly, and whispered, please. Don't take my parts. The human froze. His hands stopped, his heart heavy. He looked into her eye and said, no one will ever touch you like that again. He covered her with a blanket and turned off the bright lights, but he didn't leave. He sat on the floor beside her, back against the wall. Watching the stars through the window, the girl didn't sleep that night. Her circuits kept blinking randomly. Her thoughts too broken to make sense, but something deep inside her shifted. A warm feeling, quiet and strange, began to grow. Not trust, not yet, but something close. A question, maybe, was this kindness? The girl sat silently on the corner bed of the engine room, her body stiff, her hands folded tightly in her lap. Jace, the human who had taken her from the auction, worked nearby with his back turned. He didn't ask her to talk, didn't ask her to move. He just worked, humming softly to himself, sometimes fixing panels, sometimes cleaning filters. The room smelled like metal and oil, but it was warm. Nova he had called her that didn't understand the name, but she held it like a secret in her chest. She watched him closely, trying to understand his movements. He wasn't like the others. His voice didn't carry pain. His hands never struck When he noticed her watching, he smiled a little, not wide, just enough. He pushed a small bowl of food toward her, warm and smelling strange. She didn't touch it, not for hours, but when he left the room, she reached for it quickly and ate in silence. No one yelled at her for taking too long, no shock, no punishment. She didn't know what to do with that night. Jace placed a small blanket over her legs and said, "It gets cold in here sometimes." Then he walked to the other side of the ship and slept, far enough to not scare her, but close enough she could hear him breathe. Nova didn't sleep, but she stopped trembling. Days passed. Or maybe hours. She didn't track time anymore. Jace kept fixing things, wires, pipes, machines, and he talked. Not to her, not really, but out loud. He told stories about places he'd visited, machines he had built, songs from Earth. Nova didn't answer, but she listened. The sound of his voice felt safe. One day, a wrench rolled across the floor and stopped near her feet. Jace reached to grab it, but she picked it up and handed it to him. Their fingers touched for half a second, and she pulled her hand back like it had been burned. Jace only nodded and said, "Thanks," then went back to work. Later that night, she stood on shaky legs and walked to the corner of the engine panel. She picked up another tool and started helping, not because he asked, but because her hands needed something to do, something familiar, fixing things. That felt like her, somewhere deep down. Jace paused, surprised, but didn't speak. He handed her another tool, and they worked side by side for a while in silence. No one commanded her, no one owned her. She broke the silence first, her voice dry. "What is Nova?" Jace looked up, a small smile on his face. "It's the name of a star," he said, "bright, beautiful, and full of energy. Even if it looks quiet from far away." She blinked slowly, then nodded. "I don't remember my old name," she whispered. "That's okay," Jace replied. "Nova fits you." The next morning, Jace returned from storage carrying spare parts. He paused in the hallway, staring at her. Nova had organized every tool in the room, by size, function, and frequency of use. She sat in the corner again, hands folded, pretending she didn't care. But he noticed the tiniest smile on her lips, the first he'd seen, later that day, while cleaning her circuits. He found something buried under damaged wiring near her spine, a control chip, still active, still pulsing faint red light. Whoever sold her had kept her partially under control the whole time. He didn't tell her yet. Instead, he scanned her structure in secret, trying to find a safe way to disable the chip without hurting her. If he messed up even one step, it could fry her brain. That night, as Nova pretended to sleep in the engine room, her eye blinked open slowly. She knew he had found something. She could feel its pain building in her back, heat rising in her skull. Something was changing. Something was waking up. Then the shaking started, slow at first, then violent. Her limbs jerked. Her system screamed warnings, and her mouth opened, but no sound came out. Jace rushed to her side, grabbing tools, wires, a pulse suppressor. She was burning from the inside, her eye locked on his face. "Desperate help," she whispered, before going still in his arms. Jace didn't wait. He activated his illegal override kit and went to work. Sparks flew, alarms rang inside her neural circuits, and smoke poured from her spinal panel. His hands moved fast, fearless, focused. He didn't care if he got arrested for what he was doing. He only cared about one thing: saving her. When the chip finally shut down, Nova stopped shaking. Her breathing slowed, her circuits cooled. She was still, but alive. Jace sat on the floor beside her, covered in sweat, breathing hard. He looked at her face, peaceful now, and whispered, "You're free." Nova didn't hear him, but somewhere deep inside, her broken systems whispered back, "Free." The light above flickered as Nova slowly opened her eye. Everything felt strange, like her body didn't belong to her anymore. But there was no pain, not like before, no burning. No wires pulling her thoughts in the wrong direction. She looked down at her hands, shaking but free. She sat up slowly, noticing something on her chest. A blanket, carefully folded, clean, soft, and next to her. Jace was sleeping on the floor, using a bundle of cloth as a pillow. His face looked tired. His fingers were stained with oil and blood. He had stayed beside her the entire time. Nova reached out just an inch, not touching him, just close enough to feel his warmth. She didn't understand why he had done this. She wasn't valuable, not to anyone. But this human had risked everything to save her. Her eye caught something shiny on the table. It was a small round mirror, half broken. She picked it up, tilted it toward her face, and stared. A scar ran down the side of her cheek. Her skin was patched where metal met flesh. She didn't look like anyone else, not even her own kind. Who was she supposed to be now? She whispered to herself, voice cracked and quiet. I don't even know who I am. Jace stirred and opened his eyes. He looked at her and gave a soft smile. You're Nova, he said. Like it was the most natural thing in the universe. The name still feels new, she replied. Then let it grow with you, he said gently. You can be whoever you want now. She wanted to believe that, but something inside her still felt broken. There were pieces, missing memories, emotions, reasons, and there were flashes. Random images in her mind fire, a ship, someone shouting her name. But the name was lost before she could hear it. Jace began working again, trying to act normal. He handed her a datapad, simple and clean. You're free to use this, he said. Learn anything, draw, type, even delete it if you want. She held it in her hands carefully, like it might explode. Then she typed one word, slowly, letter by letter. Why? Jace looked up and paused. He thought for a moment, then said, because someone once helped me when I was broken. Nova watched his face closely. Looking for lies, she found none. Later that day, she followed him around the ship. She didn't speak much, but she watched and learned how he repaired the cooling system, how he adjusted engine pressure. When he dropped a small bolt, she caught it mid-air. Her hands moved fast, too fast for a normal being. Jace stared at her, surprised. Where'd you learn that? I don't know, she said honestly. Her voice was clearer now, less shaky. Looks like your mind remembers more than you think, he said with a smirk. She gave the smallest nod, unsure how to feel, that night, as the ship drifted quietly through space. Nova sat alone in the control room. She stared at the stars through the glass panel. One of them pulsed bright red, and her eye widened. Something about that star made her chest tighten. She didn't know why, but she whispered, I've been there. The next morning, she told Jace what she saw. He checked the coordinates and went pale. That's part of the royal system, he said slowly. Heavily restricted space. Nova felt her hand shake slightly. I remember fire, she said. And? Someone screaming my name, Jace asked. Do you remember the name? She shook her head, frustrated later, while scanning her internal system logs. Jace found fragments of a memory file, encrypted, half corrupted. But it was there. He spent hours restoring it, skipping meals and ignoring rest. Then finally, the message appeared, fuzzy and glitching. A girl's voice, crying, shouting something in another language. Nova stepped forward and stared at the screen. Her lips trembled, and she whispered, the same word from the file, a name, alien, royal-sounding, powerful. It wasn't Nova. It was her real name, buried deep inside her like a forgotten song. Jace turned to her slowly and said, Nova, I think you are never supposed to be sold. She blinked, confused. What do you mean? He pointed at the signal trace inside the file. This was locked inside you like a secret. It came from a palace. not a slaver ship. Nova stared at the screen, her hands cold, her thoughts racing. Her heart, if it could be called, that felt heavy, full of something she hadn't felt in years. Could it be true? Had she once belonged to something more? Or, worse, had someone thrown her away, on purpose? Nova couldn't sit still. Her legs moved restlessly. Even the metal one clicked with a nervous rhythm. The name she had spoken earlier echoed inside her head like a whisper that refused to fade. It didn't feel like a stranger's name. It felt like a memory trying to claw its way out. Jace worked silently at the control panel, watching the old file play over and over. Each time, the voice crackled with static, but the emotion in it was real, raw, and scared. He slowed it down frame by frame, trying to see the source. And then, in one broken frame, a young alien girl appeared on screen, dressed in royal blue. Crying into a camera, Nova saw her and gasped. I know her face, she whispered. Jace looked over, his face serious now. That's you, Nova. She shook her head fast, backing away. No, I don't cry. I don't speak like that. You did once, Jace said softly. Before someone turned you into this. She touched the side of her head. Fingers trembling over the scar near her temple. She remembered now Wire's pain. Voices telling her she was property. The day they erased her mind, they didn't just delete data. They crushed something deeper, but something had survived. Buried and broken, it was rising now, angry, afraid, but alive. The ship jolted suddenly, pulled out of drift by a nearby magnetic signature. Jace rushed to the console, reading the scans. Something's coming, he said. Small transport. Ship, no ID tag. Nova stood beside him, her hands clenched. They're here for me, she said quietly. How do you know? Because I've felt that signal before, she replied. When they took me, Jace activated the shields and dimmed the lights. He didn't ask her to hide. He just looked her in the eye and asked, "Can you fight?" She hesitated. I don't know, she answered honestly. But something inside me wants to. The enemy ship docked forcefully, shaking the corridor. 3 bounty hunters in dark armor stormed through the hatch, weapons ready. They didn't speak, just moved in perfect silence. Like machines, their target wasn't Jace. It was her. Nova stepped forward, her body tense. One of the hunters raised a taser rifle. Aiming straight at her chest, Jace shouted, "Nova, get back!" But something inside her snapped. The lights in the hallway exploded. The floor panels glowed beneath her feet. A hum filled the air, sharp and alive, like energy responding to her anger. Nova's hands rose without thinking, and the metal around her bent unnaturally. The rifle in the hunter's hands cracked in half. As if crushed by invisible force, her eye lit up bright blue. Blazing now, her voice rang out, no longer broken. "Leave," she said. With power behind each word, the bounty hunters paused, unsure what they were seeing. Then they charged, but Nova moved first. She raised one hand and slammed it into the floor. A shockwave burst outward, knocking all 3 attackers into the wall. Sparks flew, alarms blared, but Nova didn't stop. Jace could only watch in awe. The girl who once couldn't even lift her head was now glowing like a star. He shouted too. Her trying to pull her back? "Nova, that's enough. You'll burn out." But she didn't stop until the last hunter dropped his weapon and ran. One of them tried to grab her, desperate, but as he touched her, his entire arm froze locked in place like time had stopped. Nova stared into his visor and said, "You're not taking me back." And then, just like that, it ended. The power faded. Her glow dimmed. And Nova collapsed into Jace's arms. He caught her, barely, her body heavy, her circuits smoking. She looked up at him, her voice weak again. "I didn't know I could do that." Jace held her close. "I think there's a lot more you don't know." They dragged the remaining hunter off the ship and launched him back toward his ship's auto-return. Nova sat in silence, eyes closed, her breathing shallow. Jace began scanning her vitals, but something new appeared on his monitor. Her internal systems were changing, adapting, rewriting themselves. She wasn't just a mix of flesh and machine anymore. She was becoming something else, something more. But Nova didn't care about that right now. She reached for Jace's hand and held it. Weakly, and for the first time since the day she was taken, she whispered, "I don't feel like a toy anymore." The silence after the fight felt heavy, like something sacred had been disturbed. Nova lay still for hours, not asleep, not awake, just floating between thoughts. Her circuits cooled slowly. But the strange energy inside her had not faded. It now moved like a quiet storm under her skin. She had tasted something she didn't fully understand: power, raw and dangerous. Jace sat nearby, not speaking, just watching her carefully. He didn't treat her like a weapon. Not even after what she did. He looked at her the same way he did. When she first stepped onto the ship, she mattered. When she finally sat up. Her voice was calm but unsure. "What's happening to me?" Jace didn't answer right away. He showed her a scan of her system, zoomed in on lines of code running in her neural circuits. "You're changing," he said. "Something inside you is rewriting everything." Nova stared at the screen, her eye blinking in confusion. "This wasn't supposed to happen," she whispered. "No," Jace said quietly. "It wasn't." Later, she stood in front of the mirror in the medbay. Her reflection looked the same, but it wasn't. She saw the way her pupils glowed slightly. Now, how her skin shimmered in certain lights. And she remembered the hunter's voice before he fled. "She's not broken. She's evolving." The words echoed again when the ship's sensors picked up an approaching signal. Jace read the data with a deep frown. "It's a royal ship," he said slowly. "Class 7, cloaked, high security." Nova's stomach twisted. "They're not here to help," she said. "They never are." Jace powered down the ship's lights and moved them into a dark cloud field to hide. But it was too late. The ship locked onto them and sent a message directly to Nova's neural frequency. She dropped to her knees, gripping her head as voices poured into her mind. Familiar, cold, sharp voices. "We've found you, defective one. Return now, and we'll erase your mistake." Jace grabbed the toolkit and began installing jammers. He connected wires to Nova's core and tried blocking the signal, but this wasn't a normal command. It was something older. Deeper, a command rooted in her creation, built to shut her down completely. Nova screamed, sparks shooting from her wrists. Jace shouted over the noise. "Fight it, Nova. Don't let them in." Her body twisted as two systems battled, one forcing her to kneel, the other pushing her to rise, and then a word formed in her mind, not given by them, but born from her. "No." The signal shattered. The feedback cracked the jammers, and the ship jolted violently. Jace pulled her into his arms as her body slumped forward. But she wasn't unconscious, just calm. "I blocked it," she said quietly. I shocked at her. "Shocked. You overpowered a royal control command." Nova stood slowly, her breathing steady. "I think I know who I was now." Jace listened closely, not interrupting. "I wasn't just someone's daughter," she said. "I was part of a program. Something secret, hidden in the palace." She walked to the main console and entered a code. One she didn't know she remembered. A hidden folder opened on the screen. Inside it were images, blueprints, logs files about a project called Core. Nova. It wasn't a name, it was a code name. She scrolled through the logs. Reading aloud, Subject 12, Hybrid Prototype, Energy Adaptation, Successful. Emotional Programming, Incomplete. She felt cold all over. "I wasn't born the way I thought." Jace placed a hand on her shoulder. "That doesn't matter now." He said, "You're alive and you're free." She turned to him, her voice shaking. "No, it matters. Because if they find me again, they'll shut me down for good." Jace looked out the window at the stars and said something she didn't expect. "Then we find them first." Nova blinked. "What?" "We stop running," he said. "We get answers. And we break whatever leash they still think they have on you." For the first time, Nova didn't feel like prey. She felt like a weapon no one had finished building, but with Jace beside her, maybe she could finish herself in the dark hallway of the ship. She stared at her reflection one last time before walking away. This time, she didn't look broken. She looked ready. The ship glided in silence toward a forgotten moon, hidden behind debris and static storms. Jace rerouted all systems to stealth mode while Nova stood near the viewport, her fingers lightly touching the glass. She wasn't afraid anymore, but something inside her had changed, not just her systems, not just her memories, her heart, if she could still call it that. She remembered flashes now corridors of gold, voices calling her subject, machines analyzing her every breath. They had built her, named her, and when she showed too much emotion, they locked her away like a failed tool. But she wasn't a tool, not anymore. Jace checked the map and pointed to an old communication relay deep inside the moon's surface. "If the files are real, that place holds the master access codes to the core program." Nova nodded slowly, her voice steady. "Then that's where we go." The moon's surface was cracked and hollow, filled with old cables, twisted steel. An abandoned tech, Nova walked through it like someone retracing a nightmare. Jace followed close behind, carrying his repair kit and a small energy blade just in case. Deep inside the core chamber, they found a sealed vault. Nova placed her palm on the panel, and it opened with a soft click. It knew her, even after all this time. Inside was a control terminal, still blinking, still alive. Nova approached it, her steps slow, her breath uneven. The screen lit up and a voice spoke cold. Sharp, familiar, core. Nova recognized. Command authority level confirmed. Jace reached for her arm. "You don't have to do this." "Yes," she replied. "I do." She accessed the deepest files, the ones no one was ever meant to see. Her creation logs appeared. Dates, tests, experiments. She read lines that made her stomach twist. Emotion, chip malfunction. Subject developed attachment to early handler. Subject displayed refusal to follow direct kill command. Unit marked for decommission. She turned away, her voice trembling. "They were going to erase me because I felt." Jace didn't try to explain it away. He simply stood beside her, silent. Then Nova pulled up the root code of the core protocol, a long string of commands that governed every part of her synthetic brain. If she deleted this, she would never be under anyone's control again. But it was risky too much, and her mind could collapse. "Help me," she said softly. Jace nodded and stepped in, fingers flying over the panel with her. Together, they disabled command chains, burned royal tracking codes, and erased remote override permissions as the final command was entered. The room began to shake. The system was triggering a self-defense purge. Jace shouted, "We need to get out now." But Nova stayed a moment longer, her eye glowing bright. She leaned close to the interface and whispered, "I am not your property." She slammed her palm on the release key. The mainframe burst into flames as they ran down the collapsing hallway. Metal cracked and panels exploded. They barely made it to the ship before the vault collapsed in on itself. Inside, Nova collapsed on the floor, her chest heaving, her circuits flickering with heat. Jace kneeled beside her, scanning her vitals. "Are you okay?" Nova opened her eyes slowly. "I think I'm finally free." But just as Jace smiled, the console flashed red. A new signal was coming in. Not a royal ship, something bigger. Nova stood up slowly, her voice calm but cold. They know the last failsafe must have sent a signal across the Empire. Whoever built her was coming to finish what they started. Jace looked at her with a mix of fear and pride. So what now? Nova looked out at the stars, her eyes clear. Now we make sure they regret ever letting me live. The stars outside were quiet, but Nova could feel it coming, the storm before the strike. Their ship drifted near a gas giant, cloaked and silent, yet it wouldn't matter soon. The final message had gone out from the moon's core, and the ones who made her would come, not to ask questions, not to understand. They would come to erase, to silence her forever. Jace reinforced the shields, his hands moving quickly across the console. He had patched this ship more times than he could count, but never for something like this. He looked over at Nova, standing near the engine room. Calm, focused, different. She wasn't a broken thing anymore. She was something sharp and whole. Still time to run, he said, half joking. Nova turned her head slightly. Not anymore. The warning alarms came in slow, at first one ship, then two, then 10. A fleet of silver royal vessels appeared through the folds of space, their lights glowing like cold suns. They surrounded the human ship like vultures around a dying creature. A voice came through the comms, synthetic and polished, core unit. 12. You are ordered to surrender yourself for termination. Nova didn't answer. Instead, she stepped to the control console and linked her palm to the ship's interface. Blue light raced up her arm as she fused her thoughts with the machine. She was no longer just Nova, no longer just flesh and code. She had become something in between, a living spark born from betrayal. Rebuilt by kindness, Jace watched the ship respond to her like it was alive. Engines thrummed with new energy. Shields bent and reshaped like they were breathing. Nova looked at him and smiled. You gave me a heart, she said softly. Now I'll use it to protect everything we've built. The royal fleet opened fire, lasers slicing through space like blades, but Nova moved first, her voice echoing through every system of the ship. She rerouted energy, bent gravity, and twisted the old craft into something faster, sharper, stronger. The enemy didn't expect resistance, not from a scavenger ship led by a defective unit. One by one, their systems failed. Nova jammed there. Targeting redirected their missiles and pulled their drones into each other like magnets. The battle wasn't loud. It was elegant, like a song of precision and fury. Inside the enemy command ship, high-ranking officers watched their systems fail without explanation. Who gave her this power? One of them screamed. No one had the answer. They never understood that it wasn't about power. It was about choice. Nova broke through their network and sent a message to every screen in the fleet. Her face appeared, calm and clear. You built me to obey, she said. You called me defective because I loved, because I protected, because I chose. I'm not your failure, she continued. I'm your proof that you were wrong. Then she cut the connection and activated the pulse. A wave of neutralizing energy swept through space, disabling every hostile ship without killing anyone. Their weapons darkened, their ships powered down. And just like that, it was over. Jay stood in awe as the screen showed one last image. Royal ships drifting quietly, powerless. Nova stepped back from the console, breathing heavy but steady. She looked around the ship, at the blinking lights, at the man who never gave up on her, and she smiled. Not like a machine trying to copy emotion, but like someone who finally understood her own worth. Jace walked over and held out his hand. So, what now? Nova took it gently, her fingers warm. We write our own story, she said. They turned the ship toward open space, no longer running, not broken, not afraid. Just two souls moving forward, one human, one once forgotten creation. Bound not by wires, not by programming, but by something stronger: trust.